The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Oakwood Elementary, casting long rectangles of light across the polished hallway floor. It was early September, that special time when summer heat still hung in the air, but the excitement of a new school year made everything feel fresh and full of promise. Mr. Thompson wasn't feeling that promise today. As the principal of Oakwood for the past 18 years, he had seen it all, or so he thought. This morning his mind was occupied with budget reports, a broken air conditioning unit in the third grade wing, and an upcoming school board meeting where he needed to justify why their test scores had dipped slightly last spring. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," called Mrs. Chen from the front office as he passed by, his coffee mug gripped perhaps a bit too tightly in his right hand. He nodded and forced a smile. "Morning, Lily. Any fires I need to put out before the bell rings?" "Nothing yet," she replied with a knowing smile. "But it's only 7:45. Mr. Thompson chuckled despite himself. That was the thing about elementary schools. You never knew what each day might bring. He continued his morning walkthrough, a routine he had established years ago. Check the cafeteria, peek into the gym where early morning basketball practice was wrapping up, make sure the custodial staff had addressed yesterday's milk spill in the kindergarten hallway. It was during this familiar route that something caught his eye through the window, something out of place. While most of the children who had arrived early were running around the playground equipment, laughing and burning off energy before being confined to classrooms, one small figure sat alone on a bench near the school garden. Mr. Thompson paused, coffee halfway to his lips. The boy couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, small for his age with a mop of dark hair that looked like it had put up quite a fight against a comb this morning. But it wasn't the boy's solitude that struck the principal as unusual. There were always a few children who preferred quiet to chaos. It was the intense focus with which the child was hunched over something in his lap, completely oblivious to the shrieks and laughter around him. Curiosity piqued, Mr. Thompson decided to investigate. He placed his coffee on a nearby windowsill, straightened his tie, a ritual that had become almost superstitious over the years, and headed for the side door that led to the playground. The September air was still cool enough to be refreshing. Mr. Thompson nodded to Ms. Patel, the young teacher on morning yard duty, and made his way toward the bench. As he got closer, he could see that the boy was writing, or perhaps drawing in a notebook that seemed too large for his small hands. The child's tongue poked slightly out of the corner of his mouth in concentration, and he didn't notice the principal's approach until Mr. Thompson's shadow fell across the page. The boy looked up, startled, and Mr. Thompson was struck by a pair of eyes that seemed too old for such a young face, serious, thoughtful eyes behind glasses that had clearly been pushed up numerous times, judging by the smudges on the lenses. "Good morning," Mr. Thompson said, trying to soften his naturally authoritative voice. After nearly 2 decades as a principal, he sometimes forgot how intimidating his 6-foot frame and deep voice could be to small children. "Mind if I ask what's got you so focused while everyone else is playing?" The boy blinked twice as if emerging from a deep daydream. He glanced around, seemingly surprised to find himself surrounded by playing children, then looked back at Mr. Thompson. "I'm working on something," he replied simply, his voice clear but quiet. Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow. In his experience, children either offered no explanation at all or launched into elaborate, often fantastical stories. This straightforward answer intrigued him. "I can see that," he said, gesturing to the bench. "May I?" The boy nodded and scooted over slightly, revealing a notebook filled with what appeared to be— Mr. Thompson squinted— musical notes. Not the simple whole notes and half notes taught in basic music class, but complex arrangements that covered the page in an intricate pattern. "I'm Alex Harrison," the boy offered, closing the notebook partially as if suddenly self-conscious. "I'm in Mrs. Wilson's 2nd grade class. Nice to meet you. Alex, I'm Mr. Thompson, the principal." He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Alex shook it with a surprisingly firm grip for such a small hand. "Are those musical notes you're writing?" Alex nodded, his eyes lighting up just slightly. "Yes, I'm trying to figure out this part in the middle. It's not coming out right." Mr. Thompson tilted his head, studying the child with growing interest. Most 2nd graders he knew were drawing dinosaurs or superheroes, not composing music during their free time. "You write music? That's pretty unusual for someone your age." A slight shrug. "My grandpa taught me. He played piano at a hotel for 40 years. There was pride in that statement and perhaps a touch of sadness. "That's impressive," Mr. Thompson said, genuinely interested now. "But wouldn't you rather be playing with the other kids before school starts?" The monkey bars looked pretty exciting this morning. He gestured toward a group of children swinging and climbing with the fearless abandon that only elementary schoolers possess. Alex followed his gaze, watching the other children for a moment before turning back to his notebook. "I like playing sometimes, but this is more important right now." He opened the notebook again, revealing more of the mysterious notation. "I need to finish it by Sunday." "What happens on Sunday?" "My grandpa's birthday. He's turning 85. Alex traced one line of notes with a small finger. "I want to play this for him." Something in the boy's tone made Mr. Thompson look more closely at him. There was a seriousness, a determination that seemed at odds with his Batman backpack and slightly mismatched socks. "Your grandfather must be very special to you," Mr. Thompson observed. Alex nodded, pushing his glasses up with one finger. "He lives with us now. Mom says his memory is going away, but he still remembers music." The boy looked up at Mr. Thompson with an earnestness that tugged at something in the principal's chest. "Even on the really bad days when he doesn't know who I am, he remembers when I play his favorite songs." Mr. Thompson felt a tightness in his throat. After nearly 20 years in education, he thought he'd heard everything, but this second grader had just rendered him momentarily speechless. Before he could respond, the first bell rang, signaling 5 minutes until the start of classes. All around them, children began gathering backpacks and lunchboxes, forming lines by their teachers who had appeared on the playground. Alex carefully closed his notebook and tucked it into his backpack. "May I ask you something, Alex?" Mr. Thompson said as they both stood up. Alex nodded, slipping his arms through his backpack straps. "Can you really read and write music? Real music, I mean, not just simple notes?" For the first time, a hint of a smile crossed Alex's face. "Yes, sir. Grandpa says I have a good ear." Mr. Thompson found himself both skeptical and curious. In his experience, parents and grandparents often overestimated their children's abilities out of love and pride. Yet there was something about this boy's quiet confidence that gave him pause. "Would you be willing to show me what you're working on sometime? Maybe after you finish it?" The boy considered this for a moment, then nodded. "I can show you now if you want. I just need a piano." Mr. Thompson checked his watch. There were still a few minutes before the final bell. "Well, we do have a piano in the music room. Ms. Rivera doesn't have a class this morning." Alex's eyes widened slightly, and he nodded with sudden eagerness. As they walked back toward the building, Mr. Thompson found himself strangely invested in what might happen next. He'd always had a soft spot for students who marched to the beat of their own drum, perhaps because as a child he'd been one himself. But there was something special about the serious little boy walking beside him, clutching his notebook like it contained treasure. They passed Mrs. Wilson, Alex's teacher, in the hallway. She raised her eyebrows questioningly at Mr. Thompson. "Good morning, Mrs. Wilson. I'm borrowing Alex for a few minutes, if that's all right." "We'll be in the music room," Mr. Thompson explained. Mrs. Wilson smiled. "Of course. Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Mr. Thompson assured her. "Alex just has something interesting to show me." As they continued down the hallway, Mr. Thompson noticed how small Alex looked walking next to him. Yet there was a purpose to the boy's stride that many adults lacked. They reached the music room and Mr. Thompson held the door open. Inside, the room was quiet and still, sunlight dancing with dust motes in the air. The piano, an old upright that had served the school faithfully for decades, stood against the far wall. Alex approached it almost reverently, placing his notebook on the stand and pulling out the bench. It was too low for him, so Mr. Thompson found a thick music book for the boy to sit on. "What's the piece you're working on?" Mr. Thompson asked, genuinely curious now. Alex adjusted his glasses. "It's something new. I'm calling it Grandpa's Morning Song because it sounds like how the kitchen feels when he makes pancakes on Saturdays." He paused, looking suddenly shy. "It probably isn't very good. Why don't you let me be the judge of that?" Mr. Thompson said gently. Alex nodded, placed his small hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. In that moment, as the first notes filled the quiet room, Mr. Thompson's world tilted on its axis. The melody that flowed from the old piano was not the simple tune he had expected. It was complex, beautiful, and played with a skill that seemed impossible from those small hands. The music rose and fell like a conversation, joyful in parts and wistful in others, creating a picture as vivid as any painting. Mr. Thompson stood frozen, coffee forgotten, budget reports and broken air conditioners vanishing from his mind. All that existed was this impossible moment, this remarkable child creating something so beautiful it made his chest ache. And as he watched Alex's face, lost in concentration yet somehow at peace, Mr. Thompson realized he was witnessing something truly extraordinary, the kind of moment that reminded him why he had become an educator in the first place. The final bell would ring soon. The school day would begin with its familiar rhythm of lessons and lunch periods and playground disputes. But Mr. Thompson knew that nothing would quite be the same again, because now he had a mystery to solve, a talent to nurture, and a reminder that even after 18 years, the world of children still held wonders he could never predict. The final bell rang just as Alex finished the last notes of his composition. The sound echoed through the music room, hanging in the air like an unanswered question. Mr. Thompson stood perfectly still, unable to form words. In his 18 years as an educator, he had never experienced anything quite like what he had just witnessed. "I haven't finished the middle part yet," Alex said softly, breaking the silence. His small fingers rested on the keys, and he looked up at Mr. Thompson with a hint of worry in his eyes. "Was it okay?" Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, trying to find his professional voice again. "Alex, that was—" He paused, searching for the right words. "That was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. Where did you learn to play like that?" The boy shrugged, suddenly self-conscious under the principal's intense gaze. "My grandpa started teaching me when I was 4. He says music is in our family's blood." He carefully closed his notebook. "I should go to class now. Mrs. Wilson doesn't like when people are late." "Of course." Mr. Thompson nodded, still trying to process what he had heard. "I'll walk with you and explain why you're late." As they made their way down the hallway, now quiet with all students in their classrooms, Mr. Thompson's mind raced. The music Alex had played wasn't just good for a child, it was remarkable by any standard. Complex harmonies, emotional depth, technical skill that many adults would envy. It simply didn't seem possible from a 7-year-old boy with smudged glasses and mismatched socks. They reached Mrs. Wilson's classroom, and Mr. Thompson knocked gently on the door. Mrs. Wilson, a veteran teacher with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach, was in the middle of taking attendance. She looked up, surprised to see the principal at her door. "Mrs. Wilson, sorry to interrupt. Alex was helping me with something this morning," Mr. Thompson explained, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Mrs. Wilson smiled. "No problem at all. Alex, you can hang up your backpack and join us for morning meeting." Alex nodded and slipped into the classroom, immediately blending in with the other children sitting in a circle on the colorful rug. If Mr. Thompson hadn't just witnessed what he had, he would never have picked out this ordinary-looking child as remarkable in any way. "Is everything all right, Mr. Thompson?" Mrs. Wilson asked quietly, noticing his distracted expression. Mr. Thompson hesitated, then said, "When you have a free moment today, I'd like to talk to you about Alex." "Nothing's wrong," he added quickly, seeing her concern. "Just the opposite, in fact. I'll stop by during your planning period, if that works." Mrs. Wilson nodded, curious but professional. "Of course. I'm free at 11:30. Mr. Thompson thanked her and headed back to his office, his mind still replaying the music he'd heard. His morning schedule was packed with meetings and paperwork, but he found himself struggling to focus. During a budget discussion with the assistant principal, he caught himself tapping his fingers, trying to recreate the melody Alex had played. At 11:25, he grabbed Alex's file from the records office and headed to Mrs. Wilson's classroom. The second graders were just lining up for lunch, chattering excitedly about the day's menu and playground plans. Alex stood quietly in line, his eyes focused on a book he held open in one hand. Mrs. Wilson dismissed her class to the cafeteria monitor and welcomed Mr. Thompson in. "So what's this about Alex?" "He's one of my quieter students, never causes any trouble." Mr. Thompson sat down in one of the small student chairs, feeling slightly ridiculous with his knees nearly touching his chest. "Tell me what you know about him." Mrs. Wilson thought for a moment. "Well, he's new this year. Moved here from Pittsburgh over the summer to live with his mom and grandparents. His academic work is solid, slightly above grade level in reading, on target for math. He's quiet during class discussions but always has thoughtful answers when called on. She paused. He keeps to himself during free time, usually reading or drawing. Why do you ask? Mr. Thompson leaned forward. Have you ever heard him play music? Mrs. Wilson raised her eyebrows. No, should I have? We don't start recorders until 3rd grade, and our class hasn't had music specialist time yet this week. This morning, I found him writing musical notation, not simple notes, but complex compositions. He told me he was writing a piece for his grandfather's birthday. Mr. Thompson shook his head, still amazed. I was skeptical, so I took him to the music room to see if he could actually play what he was writing. And? Mrs. Wilson prompted, her interest clearly piqued. And he played something that would challenge a professional pianist. It was... Mr. Thompson struggled again to find the right words. It was beautiful, moving, technically impressive. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mrs. Wilson's eyes widened. Really, our Alex? She glanced at his file on her desk. There's nothing in his records about musical talent. His mother mentioned he's shy and sometimes has trouble making friends, but nothing about music. Mr. Thompson nodded. I'd like to talk to his family with your permission. If he's as gifted as I think he might be, we should be doing more to support his talent. Of course, Mrs. Wilson agreed. I'm meeting his mother at pickup today. I can ask her to come in for a quick chat? Perfect, Mr. Thompson said, standing up. And I'd like to challenge him a bit more, see what he really knows about music. Not just playing, but theory, composition, the technical aspects. Mrs. Wilson smiled. You're thinking of giving him a little test? Something like that, Mr. Thompson admitted. I don't mean to be skeptical, but what I heard this morning was so unexpected. I need to make sure it wasn't some kind of fluke. I understand, Mrs. Wilson said. Why don't you join us at 2:15? We have our expert time then. Students share something they know a lot about with the class. Most kids talk about dinosaurs or soccer or their pet hamster. I could ask Alex to share his music. Mr. Thompson nodded, already anticipating the afternoon. I'll be there. The rest of the day passed in a blur of routine administrative tasks. But Mr. Thompson's mind kept returning to the music room and the small boy who had created something so unexpectedly beautiful. By 2:10, he found himself walking briskly toward Mrs. Wilson's classroom, trying not to appear too eager. The 2nd graders were sitting in a circle again when he arrived, and Mrs. Wilson welcomed him with a nod. Class, Mr. Thompson is joining us for expert time today. Let's show him our best listening skills. 20 pairs of eyes turned to him curiously. Mr. Thompson smiled and took a seat in the adult chair Mrs. Wilson had placed near the circle. Now, Mrs. Wilson continued, Alex has agreed to share his expertise with us today. Alex, would you like to come to the center of the circle? Alex looked momentarily panicked, his eyes darting to Mr. Thompson. The principal gave him an encouraging nod. Slowly, Alex made his way to the center, clutching his notebook to his chest like a shield. He began quietly. I like to write music. Can you tell us more about that? Mrs. Wilson prompted gently. How did you learn to write music? Alex pushed his glasses up and took a deep breath. My grandpa was a professional piano player. He played at the Grand Hotel in Pittsburgh for 43 years. He started teaching me when I was little. A girl with braided pigtails raised her hand. Can you play something for us? Alex looked at Mrs. Wilson, who nodded toward the small electronic keyboard in the corner of the classroom. It was nowhere near as good as the piano in the music room, but it would do. Would you play something you've written? Mr. Thompson suggested, watching Alex carefully. The boy nodded and walked to the keyboard, setting it up with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The other children watched curiously as he adjusted the settings and tested a few keys. This is called Rainy Day Blues, Alex said softly. I wrote it last spring when it rained for a whole week straight, and then he began to play. The simple keyboard shouldn't have been capable of producing such sound, but under Alex's fingers it came alive. The melody was wistful and gentle, evoking the patter of raindrops and the cozy feeling of being indoors while a storm raged outside. The classroom fell completely silent. Even the most fidgety children sat still, captivated by the music. Mrs. Wilson's hand flew to her mouth in surprise, and she exchanged a wide-eyed look with Mr. Thompson. When Alex finished, there was a moment of stunned silence before the class erupted in applause. A boy near the front exclaimed, "That was awesome!"
Can you teach me how to do that?
Alex smiled shyly, clearly pleased by the reaction. It takes a lot of practice. Mr. Thompson stood up and approached the keyboard. Alex, that was wonderful. I have a few questions if you don't mind. Alex nodded, looking up at the principal with those serious eyes behind smudged glasses. Can you tell me what key that piece was in? G minor, Alex replied without hesitation. And what chord progression did you use in the middle section? Alex thought for a moment. I started with a G minor, then went to E flat major, then B flat major, then back to G minor with a D dominant seventh to transition. Several of the children looked confused by the technical language, but Mr. Thompson was nodding, increasingly impressed. One more question. If I asked you to play the same piece in B flat minor instead of G minor, could you do it? Mrs. Wilson gave him a questioning look. This was getting rather advanced for a second-grade expert time, but Alex simply nodded and turned back to the keyboard. Without looking at his notebook, he began to play the same haunting melody, but now in a different key. The transposition was flawless. Mr. Thompson felt goosebumps rise on his arms. This wasn't just a child who had memorized a few pieces or who showed promise for future development. This was genuine rare talent, the kind that appeared perhaps once in a generation. As the last notes faded, the final bell of the day rang. The children jumped up excitedly, ready to go home, the magical moment already fading from their young minds. But Mrs. Wilson and Mr. Thompson remained still, both processing what they had just witnessed. Alex, Mrs. Wilson said gently, your mother will be waiting outside. Would you ask her to come in for a quick chat before you go home? Alex nodded, gathering his notebook and backpack. As he headed for the door, Mr. Thompson called after him. Thank you for sharing your music with us today. Alex, it was truly special. The boy turned back briefly, a small smile lighting up his serious face. You're welcome, Mr. Thompson. Then he was gone. Just another child in the stream of students heading home for the day. Mrs. Wilson looked at Mr. Thompson, her expression a mixture of amazement and concern. What do we do now? She asked quietly. Mr. Thompson took a deep breath. Now we talk to his mother, and then we figure out how to nurture a gift like that without destroying the child who possesses it. Outside, they could hear the usual end-of-day chaos, children calling to each other, parents chatting, car doors slamming. But inside the classroom, a profound sense of possibility hung in the air, as tangible as the music that had filled it just moments before. 10 minutes later, a slender woman with the same dark hair as Alex entered the classroom. She looked tired but smiled warmly as she shook hands with both teachers. I'm Beth Harrison, Alex's mom. Is everything okay? Her eyes showed a hint of worry.
Alex said you wanted to talk to me. Mrs. Wilson gestured to a chair.
Everything's more than okay, Ms. Harrison. We actually wanted to talk to you about Alex's musical abilities. Beth's expression softened. Oh, his playing? Yes, he gets that from his grandfather. Music runs in the family. Mr. Thompson leaned forward. Ms. Harrison, I heard Alex play this morning and then again just now with his class. I have to tell you, what I heard was remarkable. Not just good for his age remarkable, but truly exceptional. Beth nodded, not seeming particularly surprised. Thomas, that's my father, was considered something of a prodigy himself when he was young. He could have gone to Juilliard, apparently, but his family couldn't afford it. She sighed. So instead, he spent his life playing in hotel lobbies and at weddings. Still, he loved it. And now he's passing it all on to Alex. Has Alex had any formal training beyond what his grandfather has taught him? Mrs. Wilson asked. Beth shook her head. No, we couldn't afford private lessons in Pittsburgh, and since moving here to take care of my parents, money's been even tighter. I'm working 2 jobs as it is. She glanced at her watch. Speaking of which, I need to drop Alex at my parents' house and get to my evening shift in about 20 minutes. Mr. Thompson exchanged a quick look with Mrs. Wilson. Ms. Harrison, I believe your son has a gift that deserves nurturing. Would you be open to having him evaluated by a music professional? The district has a program for exceptionally talented students, and there might be scholarship opportunities available. Beth's eyes widened slightly. Really? That would be... She hesitated, then continued more softly. That would be wonderful for Alex, especially now with my father's health declining. Music is their special connection. You mentioned your father's health, Mr. Thompson said gently. May I ask what's happening? Beth looked down at her hands. Early onset dementia, It's progressing faster than the doctors expected. Some days are better than others, but she took a deep breath. The music helps. Even when he's having a bad day and doesn't recognize any of us, he still responds to Alex's playing. It's like the music reaches a part of him that's still whole. Mrs. Wilson reached out and briefly touched Beth's arm in a gesture of sympathy. That must be very difficult for all of you, especially Alex. Beth nodded. Alex is dealing with a lot right now. New school, new town, watching his grandfather change. Music has become his way of processing everything, I think. Some kids act out when they're struggling. Alex turns inward and plays piano. Mr. Thompson made a decision in that moment. Ms. Harrison, with your permission, I'd like to make a phone call tonight to Dr. Winters at the Central Music Academy. She owes me a favor, and I think she should hear Alex play as soon as possible. Beth looked surprised. The Central Music Academy? Isn't that where all those future concert pianists study? It is, Mr. Thompson confirmed. And it's extremely competitive. But they also have a scholarship program specifically for students with exceptional talent who couldn't otherwise afford to attend. If Dr. Winters agrees with my assessment of Alex's abilities, he might qualify. Beth's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Alex would be over the moon. And for my father to see Alex get the opportunity he never had. She wiped quickly at her eyes. Sorry, it's been a long day. No need to apologize, Mrs. Wilson said warmly. This is exciting news. Beth checked her watch again and stood up. I really do need to go now. But please make that call. And thank you both for paying such close attention to my son. In our old school, he was just the quiet kid in the back row. After exchanging phone numbers and a quick plan for the next steps, Beth hurried out to where Alex was waiting patiently in the hallway, absorbed in his book. When they were gone, Mrs. Wilson turned to Mr. Thompson with a broad smile. Well, this is certainly not how I expected today to go when I woke up this morning. Mr. Thompson laughed. Me neither. I was worried about budget cuts and standardized test scores, and instead, I discovered a musical prodigy drawing notes on a playground bench. Do you really think he has a chance at the Central Music Academy? It's so competitive. I honestly don't know, Mr. Thompson admitted, but I've never heard a child play like that. Have you? Mrs. Wilson shook her head. Never, not even close. She started gathering her things to leave. Keep me posted after you talk to Dr. Winters. I'm invested now. Will do, Mr. Thompson promised, heading back to his office. That evening, after most of the staff had gone home, Mr. Thompson sat at his desk and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. After 3 rings, a brisk female voice answered. Eleanor Winters. Eleanor, it's Jack Thompson from Oakwood Elementary. How are you? There was a pause, then a warm laugh. Jack Thompson. It's been, 5 years since that conference in Denver? I'm well, busy as always. What can I do for you? Mr. Thompson took a deep breath. I have a student I'd like you to meet. A second grader named Alex Harrison. A second grader? Dr. Winters sounded surprised. That's quite young for us, Jack. We typically don't evaluate children under 10. I know, Mr. Thompson acknowledged. But this child is different. I heard him play today, both a piece he composed himself and a transposition he did on the spot. I've never heard anything like it from a 7-year-old. There was a thoughtful silence on the other end. You're not one for exaggeration, Jack. If you're this impressed, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about him. For the next 10 minutes, Mr. Thompson described everything he had seen and heard that day, as well as what he had learned about Alex's family situation. Dr. Winters listened without interruption. His grandfather was his only teacher? She asked when he finished. No formal training at all? None, Mr. Thompson confirmed. They couldn't afford it. And now with the grandfather's illness, Dr. Winters sighed. It's exactly the kind of situation our founders had in mind when they established the scholarship program. Raw talent that might otherwise never be developed. She paused. All right, I'll meet with him. Not a formal audition yet, just an informal evaluation. How's Saturday morning? Say 10 a.m.? Mr. Thompson felt a wave of relief. Saturday would be perfect. I'll contact his mother tonight. Bring the grandfather too if he's well enough, Dr. Winters suggested. I'd like to meet the man who managed to teach a child this kind of musical understanding without formal training himself. After hanging up, Mr. Thompson immediately called Beth Harrison to share the news. She answered on the first ring, her voice hushed. Mr. Thompson? Hold on, let me step outside. I just got Alex to bed. There was a rustling sound, then the soft click of a door closing. "Sorry about that. What's happening?" "Good news," Mr. Thompson said, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. "Dr. Eleanor Winters from the Central Music Academy has agreed to meet with Alex this Saturday at 10 a.m. It's not a formal audition, just an evaluation, but it's a foot in the door." Beth's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. "Really, that's amazing. Alex will be so excited." Dr. Winters also suggested bringing your father if he's feeling well enough. She'd like to meet him too. There was a pause before Beth replied. "Dad's having a good week so far. If that continues, I think he'd love to come. It would mean so much to him." Her voice cracked slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson, truly. I'm just opening a door. Ms. Harrison, Alex is the one with the remarkable gift." After they worked out the logistics for Saturday, Mr. Thompson hung up and sat back in his chair, staring out the window at the darkening sky. In the education field, moments like these were rare. Moments when you felt you might genuinely change the course of a child's life. Most of the time, the impact of a teacher or principal was gradual and cumulative, visible only years later, if at all. But occasionally, if you were paying attention, you got to be present for a turning point. Mr. Thompson had a feeling that finding Alex Harrison on that playground bench might be one of those moments. As he gathered his things to head home, he thought about how easily he could have walked past that bench this morning, too preoccupied with budget concerns or administrative tasks to notice the small boy writing music in his notebook. The thought made him shiver slightly. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear, with just enough autumn in the air to require a light jacket. Mr. Thompson arrived at the Central Music Academy 20 minutes early, wanting to be there to greet the Harrison family when they arrived. The academy occupied a stately brick building that had once been a small private college. Its reputation in the music world was stellar, and its graduates often went on to prestigious conservatories and music careers. Walking through its polished hallways always gave Mr. Thompson a slight case of imposter syndrome. He could pick out a C major scale on a piano, but that was the extent of his musical knowledge. Dr. Winters met him in the lobby, elegant as always in a tailored blazer, her silver hair swept into a neat bun. "Jack, good to see you in person after all this time." They shook hands and she led him to her office to wait. "So tell me," she said when they were seated, "what made you notice this boy in the first place?" "Elementary school principals aren't typically talent scouts for musical prodigies," Mr. Thompson laughed. "Pure luck, honestly. I was doing my morning rounds and spotted him sitting alone, writing something with intense concentration while all the other kids were playing. I was curious enough to ask what he was doing." Dr. Winters nodded approvingly. "Good for you. Too many adults wouldn't have bothered." Before Mr. Thompson could respond, there was a knock at the office door. Dr. Winters called, "Come in," and the door opened to reveal Beth Harrison, Alex, and an elderly man who must be Thomas, the grandfather. Alex looked both nervous and excited, clutching his notebook tightly. He wore a button-up shirt that seemed freshly ironed, though his perpetually smudged glasses and unruly hair remained the same. Beth looked tired but hopeful. The grandfather moved slowly with the help of a cane, but his eyes were alert and curious as he took in his surroundings. "Welcome to the Central Music Academy," Dr. Winters said warmly, stepping forward to greet them. "I'm Eleanor Winters, the director. You must be the Harrison family. It's a pleasure to meet you all." After introductions, Dr. Winters led the group down a long hallway lined with practice rooms. The sound of various instruments, violins, cellos, flutes, and pianos drifted through the doors as students practiced their pieces. Alex's eyes grew wide as he took it all in, his head turning from side to side to catch every note. "This is our main performance space," Dr. Winters explained, as they entered a small recital hall with a magnificent grand piano on the stage. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, illuminating the polished wood floor. "I thought Alex might be more comfortable playing here than in a cramped office." Thomas Harrison, Alex's grandfather, nodded appreciatively as he surveyed the room. "Steinway Model D," he said, recognizing the piano. "Beautiful instrument." Dr. Winters looked at him with newfound interest. "You know your pianos, Mr. Harrison." The older man smiled faintly. "Played them for most of my life. Never one this nice, though." He turned to his grandson and squeezed his shoulder. "Go on, buddy. Show them what you can do." Alex looked up at his grandfather, then at his mother, who gave him an encouraging nod. Mr. Thompson felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. What if his judgment had been off? What if Alex froze under pressure? Or if what had seemed extraordinary to an elementary school principal was merely average to the director of a prestigious music academy? But Alex himself seemed surprisingly calm as he walked to the piano, his small figure almost comically tiny next to the massive grand. He set his notebook on the stand, adjusted the bench, and looked back at the adults. "What would you like me to play?" he asked Dr. Winters politely. The director thought for a moment. "Why don't you start with something you've written yourself? I understand you're a composer as well as a pianist." Alex nodded and turned to his notebook, flipping through several pages before finding what he wanted. Without further hesitation, he began to play. The piece started softly, almost tentatively, like someone testing unfamiliar waters, but it quickly grew in complexity and emotion, building to passages that required impressive technical skill. Mr. Thompson, who had heard Alex play twice before, was still amazed by the maturity of the composition and the confidence with which those small hands navigated the keyboard. He glanced at Dr. Winters, trying to read her reaction. Her face remained professionally neutral, but her eyes were intensely focused on Alex's performance, and she had gone very still, the kind of stillness that suggested complete absorption. When the piece ended, there was a moment of silence before Dr. Winters spoke. "That was Grandpa's morning song, wasn't it?" Alex looked surprised. "Yes, how did you know?" Dr. Winters smiled. "Mr. Thompson mentioned the title when we spoke. It's a beautiful composition, Alex. Did you write it all yourself?" "Yes, ma'am," Alex replied. "I'm still working on the middle section." "I see," Dr. Winters said thoughtfully. "Would you play something else for me? Perhaps a piece you didn't write, something classical that your grandfather taught you?" Alex looked at Thomas, who suggested, "How about the Mozart you've been practicing?" The boy nodded and positioned his hands once more. Without sheet music, he launched into Mozart's Sonata in C major, K545. Mr. Thompson wasn't familiar enough with classical music to identify the piece, but he could tell from Dr. Winters' raised eyebrows that it was significant. As Alex played, Thomas watched with visible pride, his weathered hand keeping time almost unconsciously on his knee. Beth stood with her arms wrapped around herself, her expression a mixture of awe and something like wistfulness, perhaps thinking of opportunities she'd never had herself, Mr. Thompson guessed. When Alex finished the Mozart piece, Dr. Winters asked him a few technical questions about music theory, which he answered thoughtfully, sometimes looking to his grandfather for confirmation. Then she surprised everyone by sitting down next to Alex on the bench. "Would you mind if we played something together?" she asked him. "A duet?" Alex's face lit up. "I'd like that." Dr. Winters thought for a moment, then began playing a simple melody. "Do you know this one?" Alex listened for a few bars, then nodded and joined in, his hands finding the complimentary part as if they had rehearsed it many times before. The two played together, their hands moving in perfect harmony across the keyboard, building a musical conversation that filled the recital hall with joyous sound. Mr. Thompson noticed Thomas Harrison wipe away a tear as he watched his grandson play alongside a renowned pianist and educator. Beth reached out and took her father's hand, the two of them connected by their shared pride and emotion. When the impromptu duet ended, Dr. Winters stood up from the bench and turned to face the family. "Alex," she said, her professional reserve softening, "you have a remarkable gift. Your technical skills are impressive for any age, but especially for someone so young. More than that, you have musicality, an understanding of the emotional heart of a piece that many trained musicians never develop." Alex pushed up his glasses, looking both pleased and embarrassed by the praise. Dr. Winters continued, turning to include Beth and Thomas in the conversation. "Normally, our junior program doesn't accept students under 10 years of age. However, exceptions can be made in extraordinary circumstances." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I believe Alex represents such an exception." Beth's hand flew to her mouth. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that I would like to offer Alex a place in our scholarship program beginning immediately," Dr. Winters confirmed. The scholarship would cover all tuition costs, weekly private lessons, music theory classes, and participation in our junior ensemble. He would attend these programs after his regular school day and on Saturday mornings. Mr. Thompson felt a surge of satisfaction, as he watched Beth's expression change from disbelief to joy. This was why he had become an educator, to open doors for children who deserved opportunities, to help them find paths they might never have discovered otherwise. "I don't know what to say," Beth managed, her voice thick with emotion. "This is more than we ever hoped for." Thomas reached for his grandson's hand. "Your grandmother would have been so proud, Alex," he said softly. "So very proud," Dr. Winters smiled. "There are some forms to fill out and details to discuss, but we can handle those later. For now, I have one question for Alex." She turned to the boy. "This program requires serious commitment. You'll need to practice every day and attend all your lessons and classes. It will be challenging, especially on top of your regular schoolwork. Are you willing to put in that kind of effort?" Alex looked at his grandfather, then at the piano, and finally at Dr. Winters. "Yes," he said simply. "Music is the most important thing to me." "Well then," Dr. Winters said, extending her hand to the boy. "Welcome to the Central Music Academy, Alex Harrison." As they shook hands, the dignified academy director and the small boy with smudged glasses, Mr. Thompson felt oddly moved. He had witnessed the moment when a child's life changed course, when a door opened to possibilities that might otherwise have remained forever closed. After completing some preliminary paperwork and scheduling Alex's first official lesson for the following week, the Harrison family prepared to leave. Thomas looked tired, the excitement of the morning having drained his limited energy. But his eyes shone with happiness as he leaned on his cane. "Mr. Thompson," he said as they walked slowly toward the exit, "I owe you a debt I can never repay." "If you hadn't noticed Alex that morning," Mr. Thompson shook his head, "I just recognized what was already there, sir. The talent is all Alex's." "Perhaps," Thomas conceded, "but talent without opportunity withers. Trust me, I know." He glanced ahead to where Alex was walking with his mother and Dr. Winters. "You've given him a chance I never had. And you gave him the foundation that made this possible," Mr. Thompson replied. "He wouldn't be here without your teaching." Thomas nodded, accepting this truth. "Music has been the constant joy in my life, even when times were hard. Now, even as my memories begin to fade, the music remains." He tapped his temple. "Up here, the melodies are still clear when other things grow cloudy. And now, because of you, the music will continue through him." Mr. Thompson felt humbled by the old man's words. In his years as an educator, he had helped many children in various ways, but rarely had he seen such immediate and potentially life-altering results from a simple act of attention. Outside in the sunshine, Dr. Winters said her goodbyes, promising to call Beth with more details about the scholarship program. As she turned to go back inside, she paused beside Mr. Thompson. "Thank you for bringing Alex to my attention, Jack," she said quietly. "In all my years here, I've encountered perhaps 3 or 4 children with his level of natural ability. If his dedication matches his talent." She let the thought hang in the air, rich with possibility. "I think it will," Mr. Thompson said. "You should have seen him that first morning. So focused on his composition that he didn't even notice the playground full of children around him. That kind of concentration is rare at any age." Dr. Winters nodded. "Keep an eye on him at school, will you? Let me know if you see any signs of stress or burnout. We want to nurture his gift, not crush his spirit." "Of course," Mr. Thompson agreed. "And I'll make sure his teacher understands the importance of supporting his music alongside his regular studies." As they parted ways, Mr. Thompson walked with the Harrison family to their car. Alex was already talking excitedly about the pieces he wanted to learn, and the piano in the recital hall. "It sounded so much better than our old upright at home," he explained to Mr. Thompson. "The notes were so clear, like I could feel them in my fingers even before I pressed the keys." Mr. Thompson smiled. "That's because it's one of the finest pianos in the world, Alex, and now you'll get to play it regularly." Beth, loading her father's folding walker into the trunk, turned to Mr. Thompson with tears in her eyes. "I keep thinking about how easily this might never have happened. If we hadn't moved here, if Alex hadn't been sitting on that particular bench, if you hadn't stopped to ask what he was doing." "But it did happen," Mr. Thompson reminded her gently. "And now Alex has an opportunity to develop his gift with some of the best teachers in the country." As the Harrisons drove away, with Alex waving excitedly from the back window, Mr. Thompson stood in the parking lot for a moment, reflecting on the events of the past few days. When he'd woken up on Thursday morning, His biggest concern had been the upcoming budget meeting and the broken air conditioner in the third-grade wing. Now, on Saturday afternoon, he had helped change the course of a young boy's life simply by paying attention, by taking the time to look beyond the surface of a quiet child sitting alone on a playground bench. 6 months later, Mr. Thompson stood at the back of the Central Music Academy's recital hall, watching it fill with parents, teachers, and music lovers. The spring showcase was one of the Academy's biggest events of the year, featuring performances by their most promising students. He checked his watch. 10 minutes until the program began. Mrs. Wilson had texted that she was running late but would be there soon. Several other teachers from Oakwood Elementary had also chosen to attend after hearing about their students' remarkable journey. The last 6 months had been transformative for Alex Harrison. The quiet, serious boy still pushed his glasses up when he was thinking, and still carried his notebook everywhere. But there was a new confidence in his posture, a quiet certainty in his voice when he spoke about music. 3 times a week after school and every Saturday morning, Beth would drop Alex off at the academy for his lessons and classes. Mr. Thompson had made a point of checking in with the family regularly, making sure the demanding schedule wasn't becoming too much for the young boy. "He's thriving," Beth had told him during their last conversation. "Honestly, I was worried it might be too intense, but he loves every minute. The only struggle is getting him to stop practicing when it's bedtime." Mr. Thompson spotted Beth now, helping her father to his seat in the front row. Thomas Harrison had good days and bad days, his doctor had explained to the family. Today appeared to be one of the good ones. His eyes were alert as he surveyed the recital hall, and he was talking animatedly to his daughter. He wore a suit that looked like it had been carefully pressed for the occasion, a small flower in the lapel. Mrs. Wilson hurried in, slightly out of breath, and found Mr. Thompson at the back. "Did I miss anything?" "Traffic was terrible." "Just in time," he assured her. "It hasn't started yet." They found their seats as the lights dimmed slightly. Dr. Winters walked onto the stage, elegant in a dark blue dress, and welcomed the audience to the Academy's spring showcase. "Today, you'll hear performances from some of our most talented students, ranging in age from 7 to 18, she explained. "Each student has worked diligently to prepare their piece, and we're immensely proud of their dedication and growth." The program began with a 16-year-old violinist playing a complex Bach piece. The audience applauded enthusiastically as she bowed and left the stage. Next came a cellist, then a flutist, each demonstrating impressive skill. Mr. Thompson noticed that Thomas Harrison was leaning forward slightly in his seat, his attention unwavering despite what must have been physical discomfort. Beth sat beside him, one hand resting protectively on his arm. "Our next performer is one of our newest and youngest students," Dr. Winters announced. "Since joining us just 6 months ago, he has made remarkable progress, impressing all of his teachers with his natural musicality and dedication. Please welcome 7-year-old Alex Harrison, performing his original composition, Memories in Music." The audience applauded as Alex walked onto the stage. He looked tiny against the backdrop of the grand hall, but he moved with purpose as he approached the piano. He was dressed in his best clothes, a button-up shirt and dark pants that were slightly too big, suggesting they had been purchased with room to grow. His perpetually smudged glasses caught the stage lights as he sat down at the bench and adjusted it. Mr. Thompson felt a surge of pride as Alex positioned his hands over the keys. This was the moment all of them had been working toward. The boy's first public performance at the Academy, the first formal recognition of his gift. Alex took a deep breath, and then he began to play. The piece started simply with a gentle, nostalgic melody that evoked lazy summer afternoons and comfortable silences. Mr. Thompson recognized elements of the composition he had first heard in the school music room, but it had evolved, grown more sophisticated and emotionally complex. As the piece progressed, the melody became intertwined with a second theme, the two musical lines dancing around each other like two people sharing a lifetime of conversations. Sometimes they moved in perfect harmony. Other times they diverged, only to find their way back to each other. The technical skill required was impressive, but it was the emotional depth of the piece that held the audience spellbound. Mr. Thompson glanced around and saw that many people were sitting completely still, some with their eyes closed, wholly absorbed in the music. In the front row, Thomas Harrison was weeping openly, tears streaming down his lined face as he watched his grandson play. Beth held his hand tightly, her own eyes glistening. As the piece built toward its conclusion, the original melody returned but now transformed, deeper, richer, infused with both joy and sorrow, like a life fully lived with all its complexities and contradictions. The final notes hung in the air, resonant and clear before fading into a perfect silence. For a moment no one moved. Then the audience erupted in applause, many people rising to their feet. Alex looked startled by the reaction, his eyes wide behind his glasses as he stood and took an awkward bow. But his gaze sought only one person, his grandfather, who was struggling to his feet, supported by Beth. Thomas was applauding with more energy than his frail body seemed capable of, his face alight with pride and love. As Alex left the stage, Mr. Thompson caught Mrs. Wilson wiping away a tear. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "I had no idea." Mr. Thompson nodded, his own throat tight with emotion. He named the piece Memories in Music. I think it was his way of preserving his grandfather's memories, the ones that are slipping away. "What an extraordinary gift to give someone you love," Mrs. Wilson said softly. The remainder of the showcase continued with more talented students performing impressive pieces, but for Mr. Thompson, nothing could match the simple, profound beauty of what Alex had created. After the final performance, the audience mingled in the reception area, enjoying refreshments and congratulating the young musicians. Mr. Thompson made his way through the crowd, stopping to speak with several Oakwood teachers who had attended to support Alex. He found the Harrison family in a quiet corner. Thomas looked tired but happy, sitting in a chair someone had provided, watching as Alex was introduced to several of the other students. "Mr. Thompson," Thomas called, gesturing for him to come closer. "Did you hear it? Did you hear what he did with the middle section?" Mr. Thompson smiled and took a seat beside the elderly man. "I did. It was beautiful, Mr. Harrison. The whole piece was remarkable." "He finished it," Thomas said, his voice filled with wonder. "The part he was struggling with when you first found him on that bench. He played it for me last night and said, 'I figured it out, Grandpa. I finally got it right.'" The old man's eyes filled with tears again. "He wrote our story, Mr. Thompson, our whole story in music." Beth joined them, carrying a cup of water for her father. "The doctors say music is the last thing to go," she said quietly. "When other memories fade, musical memories often remain. Dad might forget names and faces someday, but he'll remember melodies. And now he has a new one to remember," Mr. Thompson said. "One that Alex created just for him." Beth nodded, watching her son across the room. "Alex told me he's already working on another piece. He says he wants to write music that helps people remember the important things." She turned to Mr. Thompson, her expression earnest. "I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for him, for all of us. If you hadn't stopped that morning, I'm just grateful I was paying attention," Mr. Thompson replied honestly. "It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day problems and paperwork and miss the quiet miracles happening right in front of us." A few minutes later, Alex made his way back to his family, his face flushed with excitement. "Dr. Winters says I can join the junior ensemble next month," he announced. "And she wants me to play my composition at the citywide music festival in the fall." "That's wonderful, buddy," Thomas said, reaching out to take his grandson's hand. "I'm so proud of you. Your grandma would have loved to hear you play today." Alex squeezed his grandfather's hand. "I was thinking about her when I played the second melody, the one that weaves around the main theme. That was her part of the story." Thomas closed his eyes briefly, clearly moved. "Yes, that sounds just like her, always dancing around my more straightforward tune, making everything more beautiful." Dr. Winters approached their small group, smiling warmly. "Congratulations, Alex. Your performance was one of the highlights of the showcase." "Thank you," Alex replied, his natural shyness returning now that the adrenaline of the performance was wearing off. Dr. Winters turned to Mr. Thompson. "Your instincts were right, Jack. He's one of the most naturally gifted students I've encountered in all my years of teaching, and more importantly, he has the work ethic to match his talent." Mr. Thompson nodded, watching as Alex leaned against his grandfather's chair, the old man's arm around his shoulders. "He has good teachers," he said simply. As the reception began to wind down, Mr. Thompson helped Beth get Thomas to the car. The elderly man was visibly tiring, though he insisted on walking as far as he could before accepting the wheelchair an Academy staff member provided. Will you come for dinner next week, Mr. Thompson? Alex asked as they reached the parking lot. I want to play my new piece for you. It's not finished yet, but the beginning is pretty good. I'd be honored, Mr. Thompson replied. As he watched their car drive away, Mr. Thompson felt a profound sense of satisfaction, the kind that reminded him why he had become an educator in the first place. He had entered the profession hoping to make a difference in children's lives, to help them discover their potential and find their paths. Most of the time, that work happened in small, incremental steps that were hard to measure. A struggling reader finally sounding out a difficult word, a shy child finding the courage to raise their hand, a bully learning empathy. But occasionally, if you were paying attention, you got to witness something truly extraordinary. A hidden gift revealed, a door opened to a future that might otherwise have remained locked, a life forever changed by a simple moment of recognition. Mr. Thompson thought back to that ordinary Thursday morning 6 months ago. Budget worries, a broken air conditioner, a small boy sitting alone on a playground bench. How easily he might have walked past, too preoccupied with administrative concerns to notice what was right in front of him. But he had noticed. He had stopped. He had asked a simple question, and because of that, a remarkable young musician was now sharing his gift with the world, preserving his grandfather's legacy in the universal language of music, creating beauty that would touch countless lives in ways none of them could yet. Imagine, all because someone had taken the time to look beyond the surface and see the extraordinary potential of an ordinary child on an ordinary day.